So I knew that this was a big deal, Pablo, when I mentioned earlier today to Chris Sims that I was going to be talking to Pablo Torre for PFT PM, and Sims was like, "Oh, like he'd talk to you." So
Wow.
you've made it when
Wow.
Chris Sims is actually surprised that the person involved would lower himself or herself to speak to me. So you have that going for you, which is nice.
I should have added so many more things to my rider. I wanted my skull. I wanted my spittoon.
Yes.
Frankly, I wanted the best psychedelics you had to offer, and I instead just said, sure. A real oversight by me.
There are many ways a podcast can begin. Often with a formal introduction, Pablo Torre of Pablo Torre Finds Out, joining us here on PFT PM, or you just cut right into the middle of a conversation about nicotine pouches and smokeless tobacco, which apparently works because 1 million people presumably can't be wrong. All right, we've got so much to get to, and we have limited time, and I could do 184 minutes on this topic, just like Joe Rogan and Aaron Rodgers did last week. I just want to start with the moment that this Bill Belichick and Jordon Hudson odyssey caught your eye. What was the thing that made you say, oh, there's something?
It was the Super Bowl. And it was a commercial in particular, the Dunkin' Donuts commercial. It's Ben Affleck, it's Matt Damon, it's a zillion celebrities. It's Bill Belichick. And wait a minute, is that who I think it is? And she was an internet creature entirely at this point, Mike. Jordon Hudson was somebody that you sort of like knew about if you were pretty online, like both of us are. But in terms of her showing up, it was like, wait a minute, is that an extra that they cast as like a body double, or was it the real McCoy? And when you start poking around that, and I have in my life collected over the course of the dozen years I've been at ESPN and beyond, Sports Illustrated before that, I've collected just a strange, as you do as well. You have a strange Rolodex of just like, all right, well, time to start asking some people some stuff. Let me see if I can find out. And what I was told was that Jordon Hudson was acting as Bill Belichick's agent for the most high-profile sort of marketing job imaginable in American life. And in fact, more than that, she was negotiating directly with Ben Affleck and Matt Damon, who were, I am told very reliably, flabbergasted that this was who they had to go through to get to the guy that they revered for decades as the greatest coach of all time. And so that bit, just Jordon Hudson is kind of Bill Belichick's momager, a Kris Jenner figure at age 24, we thought, for the Super Bowl ad was like, okay, let me do this, but then let me just make sure I don't give up the thread as this proceeds.
Were you hearing things before that? And I say this with full awareness that we need to choose our words carefully, lest we end up on the wrong side of the caption of a civil action. But, and I think we both would, I don't necessarily say
I was on the wrong side of it until she deleted the Instagram story. And then I was like, I think I'm on the right side of it again. It was hard to track, Mike.
Well, but it would be fascinating. We'll talk about that if there was litigation, and I don't think there ever will be, because it would be a fascinating way to get to the bottom of the rabbit hole. But
yes,
were you hearing things before the Super Bowl commercial that had you wondering, is something weird, or that sounds judgmental, is something unusual, that's the better word, going on here?
Certainly whispers, but nothing that felt reportable at the time to me. Certainly just the basic idea, and this sort of recurs even now at this phase in the reporting, where it's like, why are you interested in this? And my answer typically just begins with, because I'm a sports fan. And I remember this guy when he was the archetype of one extraordinarily sharply defined concept of doing your job and discipline and privacy and basically having an undefeated record against the media by being so hard to deal with that he became admired by the people that couldn't get anywhere close to what felt like a view of his interior life. And so the idea that Bill Belichick, it's not the age gap stuff, as much as that was certainly the first sort of like meerkat poking out of the burrow was like, whoa, okay, hold up. Let me adjust my mental model for Bill Belichick. It then became, I mean, it was before then. It was the ring cam video, Mike. It was the video that got leaked on the internet in November 2023, which we can get to later, I'm sure. But that was like, I'm seeing a topless Bill Belichick in all of his bounty, just dazed on a porch. What is this? And so you begin to hear, oh, it's because he's dating this young woman. And then it's like, okay, well, certainly as much as taping and cameras and footage and the destruction of footage has been part of his saga in the NFL, this felt like a real key change in the musical sort of journey of Bill Belichick.
And that's a great point. I say all the time, we don't choose our stories choose us. We are just the spectators to the stuff that happens that catch our interest. And I think one of the most important things that we can have as media members is an understanding of the stuff that would have gotten us interested as fans. And
Yes.
I always try to keep that barometer properly calibrated so I'm not telling fans what I think they should be interested in. I know what they're interested in. I know that there's a point where it becomes overly salacious or why are you
Sure.
telling them things like that? But they clearly want it. And if I was a fan, I'd want to know it too, because of all the guys who have ever served as head coaches in the National Football League, if we were going to rank them 1 to 1,000, the guy at the bottom of the list to be the one who's making this turn is him.
I would even widen that ranking because I have a similar mental exercise where I'm like, if I could just think of famous people who I'd say to myself, not them, he'd be the gold medalist. It would be him, Mike. And look, there are ways, and I should just also say, there are ways in which this story becomes significant and fascinating and, dare I say, important when it comes to the study of power. Who has it? Who accesses it? How is it given away? When it comes to, a bit fast forwarding, the highest paid public employee in the state of North Carolina at a time where public education is having its own crisis across our country. Here is the guy getting $10 million a year in charge of essentially a bunch of public school students, that being the North Carolina football team. It's just fascinating. It's politics and sports all wrapped up in this. And you don't have to try very hard to get to the idea of, okay, there is news value because he's a public figure, and then there's sort of this character study, and then there's this backstage university politics story, and all of it happens to be something that, as you put it, the tribe has spoken about, right? Like, I wish I could take credit for people's interest in this story. I just happen to be doing a thing that I love, which is a bit of a highbrow and simultaneously lowbrow version of something that feels, to me, very interesting.
Yeah, I had seen your reporting about the Super Bowl commercial, but that was before it all reached the highest possible level when she interrupted the CBS interview and put the thing in the middle of everyone's radar screen. And then TMZ shows up, Page 6 shows up, People shows up, and it becomes this massive story well beyond the boundaries of sports media. You were on it, but that CBS interview, like without that, I don't know that there's a moment that the pot boils over, but that really was the holy shit, what is going on here instant that the story dramatically changed and there's no putting that toothpaste back in the tube.
My phone blew up. My phone blew up because I was reporting the story without that knowledge. And then that happens, and suddenly the floodgates are opened. And so just to paint sort of like the network effect, pun intended, I suppose, when CBS tries to do a puff piece and she blows it up and she's on tape. And there is, again, 30 more minutes that CBS, Sunday morning will not release because that's not the type of show they do. Well, guess what? There is a lot of other interest in the story of that day that wasn't merely about that day. It was about the way in which that day echoed so many other days that people had. The whole idea of Bill Belichick launching this media career last offseason after he is thrown out of the NFL and launches about a half dozen different media ventures with people who all have to encounter and then effectively work for Jordon Hudson, who is treating them in parallel ways to the ways that we saw just in brief glimpses on that CBS Sunday morning interview. I mean, It's that, and then the other part, the other node in this power dynamic are the people around Bill Belichick right now in North Carolina who are saying to themselves, okay, even if we regard this man as our Logan Roy, this is my translation, as in someone we're around all of the time, but very afraid of, afraid to tell the truth to. The dissent of every outlet, and by the way, the New York Times is now here, Beyond People, Beyond TMZ, everybody's in the pool now, right? The dissent of all of these outlets means that he cannot plausibly be ignorant of at least one key disaster being the CBS thing. And so now there's a moment for change to happen behind the scenes if we can actually tell the truth about what it's been like for us, now being the people around Bill Belichick at Carolina. And so across the map, everyone's seeing an opportunity. Everyone's more willing to talk. Everyone's now effectively unable to keep themselves from calling me because I've been talking to them already and say, look, it's actually even more ridiculous. And now we have the ability to not seem like out of nowhere bomb throwers. We are actually in a long line of people who have experienced something like this.
And the biggest story on PFT for the month of May, most trafficked, most viewed, was the story based on your reporting that Jordon Hudson had been banned, your word, banned from the North Carolina facility. And that sparked a very carefully worded and heavily loaded statement from North Carolina that said plenty about the situation. But do you have any, banned, because banned means if you show up, we're calling the cops. And you never meant it that way. And I got it from the start. I'd like to think the trained eye would say, of course they're not barricading the door with furniture to keep her out. The point is, she was involved and something happened to cause someone from UNC to say to Bill Belichick, moving forward, she will not be involved. And that was basically the first line of their statement.
Yes. Yeah, thank you for letting me clarify. I mean, part of the thing that I am finding as I do magazine-style investigative journalism in a podcast medium is that, when I say ban, I mean it and I stand by it, but I am also not implying that snipers were ready to take her out.
Geez.
Like it wasn't like, and I've been talking to people in Carolina since, and they have pointed out that, look, Carolina as an institution on the sports side has literally had to ban people, as in we will arrest you at the door. Right? So there are gradations, the terror alert scale of banning. I probably was a bit flippant in my conversational presentation of what it means when the university says to Jordon Hudson, you are not welcome here, you are not wanted here, you cannot be here. And so the PR statement that you put, right, that you just cited, it's fascinating, Mike, as a PR statementologist. They could have said this reporting is incorrect. She's welcome here anytime. They did not. They said she does not work for us. She is not involved with us. And she works exclusively in the capacity of Bill Belichick's personal brand. And also she is welcome in the building. And so I think what I gave them inadvertently, and I can't tell if I inadvertently benefit from this or not, I gave them just enough of a shaft of daylight to include in that sandwich in which most of the layers are confirming what I've said, enough to say, you might see her one day here, and doesn't that mean that this reporter is effectively incorrect? I will just then briefly give the postscript, which is that Bill Belichick, very uncoincidentally, under the guidance of a new PR person, Brandon Faber, who you've covered on your site as well, is saying stuff explicitly to ESPN, to Ryan Clark, to Michael Strahan. She's off to the side. That's a personal relationship, not personal and professional. Certainly not the person who was CC'd on every single email, according to public records requests, by the University of North Carolina at the request of Bill Belichick. Not the person who's on the field, not the person who was guiding his thinking about how he is operating and moving with his branding. By the way, to add a bit of just a wrinkle here, right? CBS Sunday Morning, they initially said, and this is something that I did not put in the episode, but I have reported, they wanted to do that thing that blew up with the navy sweater with the holes in it and the matching navy sweatshirt she was wearing. They wanted to do that at Chapel Hill. They wanted to do it at Carolina. And Jordon Hudson was the one who said, no, we have that for something else. So already she's affecting, wait a minute, the marketing, one of the biggest platforms to market the football team. And then, of course, getting to Hard Knocks, right? They're supposed to do that. And Jordon Hudson, as you've chronicled extensively, is responsible for that blowing up too. And so the whole idea of she's off to the side, she was never involved. I've seen enough reporters, Mike, who love to suck up to coaches, who are like, look, the Jordon Hudson story was wildly exaggerated from the start. And all I can tell them is that you guys got to do some reporting if you think that that's plausible, that we are overestimating the impact here, because it's verified, documented, now increasingly public. Like, they're missing the story. And that's what's also darkly humorous about this.
Well, yeah, even in post-truth America, when the BS is so obvious from the cleanup effort after the fact, she's not involved with North Carolina football with the kind of strength that suggests she never was. But then, oh, wait, well, she had to deal with some of these PR requests because there was no one here to serve as the SID. Yeah, because he didn't want whoever was there, apparently. They had multiple SID employees. The guy who was in charge of football PR under Mac Brown is now reassigned to other sports under the North Carolina Athletic Department. So it's just an odd way of trying to push back because it's incomplete, it feels disingenuous at best, and it obscures the reality that she was heavily involved. And this idea that somebody would just show up and work for any organization that they're not employed by, it made me think of the old bit from Seinfeld when Kramer started showing up at Brant Leland and working there until they ultimately fired him because his work sucked. Like, no one's going to work for someone for free. And even if they want to do it, there are mechanisms for volunteers. You just don't let someone show up who's not on the payroll and provide services. That creates a whole host of problems that North Carolina eventually closed the book on.
And also, there's a parallel here to the NFL. And you, of course, covered this and you know it well. But the whole fear with Belichick, among several, with NFL teams was, who's he going to bring with him? You know, like, who is his inner circle? Who's he going to empower? Who's going to be running things? So just know that the person who would be doing this in the NFL in a parallel way would have been Jordon Hudson. And maybe there would have been more resistance. Maybe. I can't say for sure. Team by team, it differs. But Carolina, man, when you go to the origin story of that, right? Bubba Cunningham, the AD, does not want Bill Belichick. Chancellor does. Some powerful political allies in Carolina say, we got to get the greatest of all time. We're Carolina football. We're not Carolina basketball. This can save and revitalize us. And so it's an over-the-top thing in which there is a real overruling. And the idea that Jordon Hudson came to power as a result of a power struggle is also why we are seeing why it's more than just salacious tabloid stuff. It's actually how the sausage gets made at universities, in sports, among powerful people.
And it's unprecedented that any coach, regardless of the age gap, and the age gap is irrelevant to the fact that there is someone close to the coach who is not employed by the organization, who was actively working for the organization, actively directing other employees at North Carolina. That in and of itself is a big deal because that never happens. And again, for it to happen to the ultimate no distractions, do your job football coach makes it so much more compelling. On the North Carolina angle, I don't think people appreciate the significance of June 1. Mm-hmm. On June 1, Bill Belichick has the power to write a check for $1 million and walk away. That gives him so much more power than he currently has. Because if they push him and push him and push him, all he's got to do is pull out the checkbook, and he's gone. And he's gone. And they're high and dry without Bill Belichick. And I feel like that angle has been grossly underreported, underanalyzed, and underestimated by our colleagues in the media.
Yeah, look, this was weird before Jordon Hudson became a character, one of the protagonists. It was weird based on that language alone, right? It comes 10 times cheaper for him to pull his own parachute cord. Like, what is that about? What does that imply? And I think it implies very clearly that Bill Belichick wanted an escape hatch to go to the NFL. And now it seems increasingly obvious that that escape hatch is not going to be activated to go to the league. But now it becomes this thing of, am I actually the boss in the way that I need to be? Am I in charge in the way that I demand to be? And is my demand being guided not merely by my inner circle of the same people I've been with that NFL teams kind of quietly laugh at behind the scenes, right? It's also guided by her because they have a relationship in which Bill Belichick has told multiple people that I've talked to directly, he has called her brilliant. He has tried to get her 6-figure jobs on the media enterprises that he was also working for. She is the COO of Belichick Productions, even if that LLC is not actually incorporated anywhere. That's the LinkedIn profile. She is his idea mill and creative muse per the acknowledgments page of his book. She is the person that you had to deal with if you were Matt Damon, Mike. Like the whole idea of, no, she's doing the lower level stuff. No, this is at the top. And so the speed running through industries that she's not familiar with. Look, I'll be generous here, right? Maybe she thinks she's doing what's best for Bill. All I can tell you, based on reporting and evidence, on information and belief, as they say in a courtroom that I hope to maybe never have to enter.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right. Information and belief has done a lot of work over the years, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's done a lot of work. And what it's telling us is that the unintended at best consequences of her being in charge has been disastrous and I cannot stress this. Both of us have reported silly, absurd, shocking stories with many twists and turns. To me, this one is distinguished by the fact pattern of behind-the-scenes disaster, trails of not merely information and belief, Mike, but footage, on-camera mistakes. And when your job is PR, you could argue that that's the number one thing you need to avoid. And it keeps on happening over and over and over again.
I could bounce around to so many different topics, and I am. Back to the CBS interview. I don't know why they just won't release it. He's almost daring them to do it. On the Pivot podcast, that very choreographed, and Channing Crowder spilled the beans on that after the fact, that Jordon Hudson choreographed the initial sit-down between Ryan Clark and Bill Belichick. To the trained eye, it was a lawyer questioning a witness on direct examination after rehearsing or at least preparing the sequence, because the whole thing was, why did you put her in the acknowledgments page? Well, this is why. Semi-plausible explanation. Oh, well, why wasn't that in the CBS? Oh, they asked. They just didn't put it in the final cut. So he keeps needling CBS for selectively interviewing or editing the interview in a way that creates a false narrative. He's triple dog daring them to release the whole thing, and I just wish they would so we could all see and we could all come to our own conclusion about whether to what extent she did interfere with the effort to ask. It wasn't even softball. It was basically T-ball questions for Bill Belichick.
It was the stuff that I am told she knew they were going to ask, actually, which is why this is extra crazy. I'm also told, because, look, I request the most futile reporting I've done is asking CBS, hey, I'd like to see this footage. Will you give it to me? And the answer is no comment. But when it comes to what people, I am told, at CBS are thinking, there is a wing of people involved with CBS Sunday Morning even who are like, we are failing to serve the public interest by having this and not releasing it. This is something that is now being put at this question of our credibility. So why don't we want to actually just turn the card over and show you what we got? But then I'm also told that there is a struggle in which, there was some assurance that because so much of this was harder than it needed to be, there was some pre-tape assurance, pre-shoot assurance that the footage they did for CBS Sunday Morning would only be used for CBS Sunday Morning and not for other programs. And so there is some implication there, I think, on CBS's side to actually be of their word and say, we're not going to feed this out to the other entities under our umbrella. Also, I am told that when it comes to the CBS side, they're afraid of. Look, I just can't stress this enough. The comedy of this. It's CBS Sunday morning, Mike. Like, they are not trying to scare people and be like, look, if you misbehave in between takes, we're gonna show it to you. It's like, no, that's not what they do. They're fine without it. It's just that now, as we've seen this again, it's hard not to think of various analogs across politics and news. You question Signal chat transcripts, and guess what? You might just get it. And so hopefully one day we will.
Well, and to take this to the highest levels of government, too, I have wondered, and I haven't explored this, and I'm not going to report on it, and I'm probably not even going to write on it, but the idea that CBS generally is tiptoeing on eggshells now as the Skydance Paramount merger approaches, and the president is tied up in it, and the president is the one who read that letter back in 2016 from Bill Belichick, and I can't help but think that somebody at CBS is afraid there's a third rail they're going to jump on if they push this too hard with Belichick, and he runs right to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue with a complaint about CBS.
I've heard that too. I mean, and by the way, it's not dramatizing of this. It's just literally how our federal government works now. It is an office of personal interest and enrichment, and Belichick's one of his guys. You know, famously, I believe Trump behind a podium at some point talked about a letter, written to Belichick. This is well established. And so I don't want to get ahead of some of the things I'm looking into, but just know that very much on my radar is what Jordon Hudson may be contemplating strategically when it comes to where this all goes next.
The way Belichick tells the story, he sent the letter of support to Donald Trump not long before the 2016 election. Trump asked him, can I read this at a rally? And Belichick said, well, if you're going to do that, I'll give you an even better one. Now, that's either Belichick's version or Trump's version or some combination of the two, but that's out there as the story of how that letter came to be. So there's a clear connection there. And if I'm CBS and I'm worried about what's on 60 Minutes and what's going on with his litigation and all these other things that seem to be a factor right now, pushing Belichick too hard would seem to be a red flag that you'd want to avoid, although I'd just love to see and hear what happened. We're curious about it. They've made it an issue. They've opened the door, as the lawyers would say, by disputing the manner in which the interview was edited to create a false narrative. Let's see the whole thing, and we'll come to our own conclusions as to what the narrative should be.
What I was told is it's about 30 more minutes, and it is her giving hand signals. As if this couldn't be more on the nose, like during the interview, like trying to direct him as if from, I guess in this case, yes, a sideline, what to do with questions. And it's like, look, for those who remember this man, you did not need to worry about Bill Belichick's ability to handle the media. He had and I say this tongue-in-cheekly, but also kind of just outright, he was basically undefeated. Like the whole thing of like, he figured out how to deal with us. He had embarrassing moments here or there and things he shouldn't have, well, but by and large, he was just the guy who felt impervious to media inquiry. So the idea that she needs to be his defensive coordinator, it's just like, what? It beggars belief, as it were.
I just thought of this as you were explaining that. Have you requested credentials to cover North Carolina home games this year? And if so, what have they said?
I am. It's funny. Your instincts are pretty good, Mike. I am requesting in the process, but currently, I'm looking at the date. Friday is the deadline for our public records requests. And so we're going order of operations here. We requested so much, and they have given us nothing. But Friday is I believe, if I have my governmental filing dates right, is the date when we should get something. And from there, we will figure out what our approach is going to be.
And I've heard you mention the Freedom of Information Act request. And folks, you need to realize certain public bodies are subject to requirements that all their business is done out in the open. And when Bill Belichick took a job at a public institution, that is the obligation he stepped into with both feet, whether he realized it or not. He could have gone to a private school and he would have been protected. His emails would have been safe. Hers would have been safe, et cetera. Have they stiff-armed you and refused to give you things you think you're entitled to in a way that would maybe violate the terms of the applicable North Carolina laws?
So I'm going to give them till Friday because I believe they have till Friday to filibuster, to punt, to torture all of the available metaphors here. But they certainly have given us nothing. And so we await their response.
Well, the potential avenue, if they do violate the applicable North Carolina law, would be to file a lawsuit. Are you willing? And I understand that it's given the content of the Instagram comment that she posted and then deleted, which was loaded with legal words, but this is a completely separate thing. Are they going to comply with their obligations under North Carolina law to make this stuff available? Would you take them to court if you think they failed to comply with their legal obligation?
If they fail to comply with their legal obligation, thank you for putting the caveat there as precisely as it needs to be, I plan to hold them to account. These are public records requests. I don't know why this should be vague or ambiguous. If you're listening, it's not like show me your emails as if there is no expectation of it. It's you get, as part of the pact between a public university and the federal government, you get things in exchange for what feels like a reasonable level of transparency. So we can tell, what is this public money going towards? It's standard operating procedure, and if we feel like they are not obliging their legal obligations, we will certainly pursue avenues to make it so.
What was your reaction when you saw her deleted message that contained those loaded Jackie Childs style terms like defamatory and slanderous?
Yeah, I was a reporter in scare quotes. My first reaction was to, and I'm not necessarily proud of this, but I did laugh, simply because there's a bit of a buildup here in which I am open and hopeful that one day Jordon Hudson and I can sit across from each other at a table like in Heat. And finally, there is the movie, as in there's finally.
Yeah, I was like, well, wait a minute, that took a turn. I got you now.
But as my legal advisor, thank you for just allowing me the ability to clarify, a De Niro Pacino kind of idea, in which we have been circling each other and finally we can confront each other face to face. But the Instagram story to me was funny just because, look, I've said throughout this, as a matter of almost warning, the thing about me is that I take stupid things seriously when it comes to how we investigate silly things that may seem silly superficially. I want to find the depth in them. I want to do it rigorously. I will talk to 11 people. I will pull fan cam footage from Patriots websites. I will hire GeoGuessers to find the visuals to match ring cam video, blurry screenshots. I will talk to everybody and do my reporting because my credibility is on the line when it comes to the stupidest or more serious episodes we do. And just so people understand, we also have done episodes in which we investigate the rec league hockey career of the current FBI director. We have investigated Russian oligarchs when it comes to Olympic corruption scandals. We have investigated billionaires in the NBA, multiple billionaires, who have so much more money and power than certainly Bill Belichick and Jordon Hudson do. So there is zero fear. What there is, though, is some mixture of, I would say, a pie chart in which there's a slice of irritation because nobody likes having their credibility questioned, even in scare quotes, by Jordon Hudson. And the other part is the deleting of it happening so soon after is, Mike, I can't script this stuff. You ask questions then. Why did she delete it? And what she posted, which was a screenshot of her text message exchange with the Airbnb owners, some text back and forth there that had really nothing to do with her beef with me on the merits of my credibility, along with just the headline being defamatory, targeted, unfair, fake reporter stuff. And that I'm like, I feel like Jordon Hudson may have accidentally, once again, placed a rake and jumped on it with both feet. And I'm like, I don't know why she did this. I just know that it is something that I am happy to keep looking into.
In a weird sort of way, and I want to give her credit here. At age 24, I was still trying to figure out how to tie my shoes at age 24. She does seem to have an advanced degree of acumen and savvy. And yes, she may be taking it a little too far and maybe lacking in self-awareness as it relates to the limits of her abilities, but she does seem like she's pretty much got her shit together. I am impressed by the fact that she has a certain depth of business understanding that I in no way had when I was 24.
I agree. She is, I would say, entrepreneurial. She is very ambitious. It seems like in a couple of ways that we have become a bit familiar with. It seems like she's taught herself some stuff over the internet and maybe overestimated her knowledge of a particular subject matter and the expertise required to win in it. But I would say that she reminds me on some level of some very young Silicon Valley people, where it's like, I will credit you, founder, for having the ambition and the cunning and the effort level, the drive to like start something and move fast and break things, as Mark Zuckerberg, my old classmate, has said. What I do not give them a break on, what I do not grade on a curve, though, is the unintended consequences that they do not consider when something blows up or gets broken. And that's the story of all of these people who are around this program, these players and their parents and these alums and these board of trustees members and these assistants and these family members of Belichick who are, it's just stunning how on one level she is isolated because those are not her allies. Those are the people that she has moved fast and broken things in the face of. But she has in her maybe most particular skill an understanding of power, which is to say she knows who calls the shots, and it's Bill. And she has Bill. And when Channing Crowder says, as you astutely observed as well, that she orchestrated the whole top of that cold open for the Pivot podcast, the same week when Michael Strahan was very coincidentally, I'm sure, observing, quote, she's not here this morning, as part of the sort of messaging pivot, pun intended, guess what we pivot back to? Jordon Hudson being in charge again.
It is strange to have that kind of ambition, that kind of ability in someone younger than where you usually would see it, that bulb get planted where it is. It should be Silicon Valley or Wall Street, or it's just odd that if she does have an uncanny and rare skill set for business, for whatever, it landed where it did. I think that makes the story even more compelling. The possibility that maybe she is some sort of a genius who just needs to develop the experiences and the awareness on how to properly handle her powers, and it just landed in this very bizarre random spot.
Yeah, I'm not saying that this is football Theranos. You know, I'm not saying that this is, I know, but I'm sort of like doing the log line of the movie version of this. Yeah. And I think you would find, as in such stories, a real dispute. Is she aggressively incompetent, or is she simply aggressive? And does it matter, right? Does it matter if she's breaking stuff? Maybe for her it doesn't. But I think that, and this is now the metaphor eating itself, but a key part of Bill Belichick and his whole legend and his whole legacy, and we use that word so flippantly, but here I think is quite meaningful. The way you think of somebody that can only be earned over the accumulation of years, if not decades. When you think about what she is doing to that, the question must be, is she also breaking that? And then you get to the question of, how does this story end? And I believe that, based on information and belief, it ain't ending well, Mike.
Well, however it goes, at some point, things are going to get ugly and things are going to get messy between her and Belichick, or her and people close to Belichick. It feels like it's already moving in that direction. And I'll ask you this. What's next? What are you planning? What are you plotting? What is going to be? Just give us a taste. Give us an idea. The next episode of Pablo Torre Finds Out that delves deeper into this modern football drama.
What I will say to you as I prepare my reporting is that the real reward isn't championships, Mike. It's the friends you make along the way. And I happen to now be friends with an army of 8 GeoGuessers, as well as I wouldn't say we're like getting dinner together, but I just talked. At some point, I want a reunion show of everybody who had to be anonymous behind the scenes that I've talked to, that can actually maybe just get together and sit at the same table and finally speak on the record. Because in the meantime, until that happens, which we are very far away from, I'm just hearing more stuff. Mike, I can't help but stress how unending this story is. When you think you're out, you get pulled back in. And some of that is my fault because I have an obsessive, passionate curiosity that I use journalism to pursue. And that is the lot in life that I have as the host of a show and a podcaster who wants to do weird shit like this. But I just can tell you that my reporting is not over. And my worry now is that it may never be.
I hate to end with this question, but inquiring minds want to know. Are you trying to get to the bottom of whether or not they are engaged? And do you think they're just kind of trolling everyone with the comments she makes, the painting of the boat, she's got a ring on? Like, what's going on with that? And what it's at the bottom of the list of the things I care about, but I feel like it's a manifestation of some sort of impishness where they are trying to mess with us.
Yeah, I've made calls about this. I am, in fact, it's on the list of stuff too. I don't think it's the most impactful when it comes to what my next episode should be about. But I can tell you that Bill Belichick in March of this year was asked by a close friend, point blank directly, are you engaged to Jordon Hudson? And he said, absolutely not. Now, since then, of course, a lot can happen. Love can bloom. Lots of things can happen as the heat is on, as it were. I would say that what I'm also told, though, is that the boat, the 8 rings thing, that seems to be a reference to her Bridgewater State cheerleading championship ring and not an actual ring. Her now wearing a ring, though, in these airport photos that I certainly cannot verify, don't know where they're from yet. Maybe she just... I suspect that she really likes being talked about. And the curse is that there are some people who she can't control, and she doesn't appreciate the way that I or you may be doing it. And to that I say, that is going to be a big problem as somebody who wants to live a life in public.
That's one of the things that I harp on all the time. You cannot dictate the terms by which you get attention. You can't say, hey, everybody, look at me. What the hell are you looking at? If you want attention, right, you get attention. She wanted attention. She got it. I don't know how much attention he wanted, but he got it too. And it's been fascinating to see how it all plays out. Pablo, this has been awesome. I have a feeling at some point down the line, we'll be doing it again if you're willing. I can impress Chris Sims again by saying, Pablo's back. Pablo's back. Pablo, we'll be looking forward to the next episode of Pablo Torre Finds Out devoted to this or everything else. If nothing else, people are now aware of your podcast. They may not have been. It sounds like you've done some great work. I'm now interested. I will go investigate. I'd rather listen to your podcast and 184 minutes of Joe Rogan and Aaron Rodgers, but let me tell you, that's a very low bar.
Mike, I thank you. The show, YouTube, podcasting, all that stuff. I'll pack a lip the next time we get to hang out.
All right, good deal. Thanks, Pablo. And thanks, everybody, for giving us some of your time. We'll be back with more PFT PM whenever we can get us a guest like Pablo Torre. See you next time. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.